It was a cold, crisp evening when a kind-hearted man named Jack, living in a quiet suburban neighborhood, found his evening disrupted by a gentle yet persistent sound, a faint scratching at his door. The world outside had begun to settle into the tranquility of dusk, the sky painted with hues of orange and purple as the first stars began to twinkle. Inside, Jack had settled into his usual routine, winding down after a long day at work. The warmth of his home was a contrast to the chill that had begun to creep in, and the soft hum of his heater was a comforting backdrop to his peaceful evening. But then, just as he was about to take his first sip of hot tea, the sound came, a quiet scratching, almost as if something was asking for permission to enter. At first, Jack thought it might be a stray cat, perhaps one of the local neighborhood cats that often wandered by, looking for a handout. He wasn't unfamiliar with the occasional visitor, but this sound was different. It was persistent, more urgent, almost as if it was pleading for attention. Curiosity piqued. Jack set down his mug and walked toward the door. He peered through the peephole, expecting to see a familiar face or an animal he recognized. What he saw, however, made his heart stop for a moment. At his doorstep stood a dog, no more than a few months old, trembling violently and clearly injured. The poor creature was covered in dirt, its fur matted with what seemed like dry blood. Its small body shivered with cold, and its breathing was shallow, as if each inhale was an effort. Jack's stomach tightened as he took in the sight of the tiny, fragile animal standing there, its eyes wide with a mix of fear and desperation. The dog was no ordinary stray. It was a victim of something much worse. It seemed to have been through a great deal of trauma. The most immediate thing that caught Jack's eye was the deep gash along the animal's side. The wound was raw, oozing with signs of infection, and the flesh around it was bruised and swollen. The dog winced in pain every time it shifted, and Jack could see it struggling just to keep standing. His heart ached with a mixture of sorrow and a fierce protective instinct. For a brief moment, Jack stood frozen, unsure of what to do. But the dog's small, pleading eyes seemed to call out to him, urging him to act. Without another thought, Jack instinctively bent down, not caring about the risk of injury from the dog's obvious fear and pain. He reached out a gentle hand, hoping that the creature might see the kindness in his eyes. To his surprise, the dog didn't retreat. Instead, it whimpered softly and, despite its pain, nuzzled his hand with quiet, almost desperate plea for help. Jack's heart broke as he felt the warmth of the dog's body against his palm. The little animal, though clearly terrified, seemed to trust him. And in that moment, Jack knew that whatever had brought this dog to his doorstep, it had come seeking refuge, and he wasn't going to turn away. Without hesitation, Jack scooped the dog up into his arms, careful to avoid the injured side, and gently ushered it inside. The moment the dog crossed the threshold of his home, it seemed to relax just a little, though still clearly in distress. Jack carefully set the dog down on the couch, taking a moment to assess the extent of the injury. His heart sank further when he saw the full scale of the damage. The gash along the dog's side was deep, and the surrounding area was swollen and red, indicating that the wound had been left untreated for some time. Despite the pain it must have been feeling, the dog looked up at Jack with eyes full of trust. It whimpered again, a soft, pitiful sound, as if silently pleading for help. Jack's thoughts raced. He couldn't leave the dog like this, not after everything it had been through. He knew he needed to act quickly. The first thing Jack did was grab his phone and call the local animal clinic. His voice was steady as he explained the situation, detailing the dog's injuries and asking if they could help. The receptionist on the other end of the line assured him that a vet would be there as soon as possible. Jack felt a small sense of relief, but it didn't ease the worry in his chest. In the meantime, he gently cleaned the wound with a damp cloth, trying to keep the dog calm and comforted, though he could see how painful even the slightest touch must have been. As he waited for the vet to arrive, Jack's mind wandered to the dog's past. The neighborhood wasn't known for stray animals. It was a peaceful middle-class area with well-kept lawns and tidy houses. No one in the neighborhood had seen a dog like this before. Jack wondered where it had come from. Had it been abandoned? Had someone hurt it? Or was it simply lost, desperately trying to find its way home? The possibilities swirled in his mind, but there was one thing he knew for certain. This dog had come to him for help, for whatever reason. Jack had become its rescuer. The next few hours passed in a blur of concern and care. When the vet finally arrived, she wasted no time in assessing the dog's injuries. She carefully examined the wound, taking note of its depth and severity. After a thorough check, she confirmed that while the injury was severe, with proper care, the dog would recover. Jack felt a wave of relief wash over him as the vet explained the treatment plan. The dog would need stitches, antibiotics, and plenty of rest, but it was going to be okay. With the vet's help, Jack set up a safe space in his home for the dog to recover. He named the dog Chance, not just because of the coincidence of its arrival at his doorstep, but because this was, in many ways, a second chance for both of them. For the dog, it was a chance at a better life, free from suffering and fear. And for Jack, it was a chance to experience the joy of caring for a living creature in need, a chance to form a bond that would bring him unexpected happiness. Over the following weeks, Jack threw himself into caring for Chance. He made sure the dog received all the medication it needed, and he spent hours sitting by its side, offering comfort and companionship. As the dog's wounds healed, so did its trust in Jack. Slowly, the dog began to show signs of its playful nature, wagging its tail and darting around the room with bursts of energy. The once fearful, injured creature was becoming a happy, energetic pup, eager to explore the world around it. Jack's life, too, began to change. What started as a single, unexpected encounter had blossomed into something beautiful. Chance had become more than just a pet. He was family. Jack had never planned on adopting a dog, but sometimes life had other plans. The bond between them grew stronger each day. Jack had learned that sometimes the most unexpected events can lead to the most beautiful changes. He'd never imagined that one small act of kindness could lead to a lifelong companion. But in that moment, when Chance had scratched at his door, Jack had found something he hadn't realized he was missing. As the weeks turned into months, Jack and Chance's connection only deepened. They went on walks together, explored the neighborhood, and spent evenings curled up on a couch, each finding comfort in the other's presence. Jack marveled at how a single act of compassion had transformed his life. He was no longer alone, and Chance was no longer the scared, injured pup that had appeared at his doorstep. Together, they had forged a bond that was unbreakable, built on love, trust, and the simple power of empathy. Every time Jack looked at Chance, he was reminded of how a single, small action could alter the course of a life. He realized that sometimes the smallest of beings could bring the greatest joys. Chance had changed Jack's life in ways he never could have imagined. And as they both moved forward side by side, Jack knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together.